Hi, I'm Shane Hurlbut. I'm an ASC cinematographer, and I wanted to kind of talk to you about something. Getting started in this industry is almost impossible. And my wife Lydia and I, 14 years ago, created a resource called Filmmakers Academy to make it possible. We saw a lot of gatekeeping in this industry and not a lot of sharing knowledge. So we wanted to pull back the curtain, give you confidence, teach you all the necessary skills to be an amazing, successful filmmaker, and package it all on this online resource that you have at your fingertips, on set, on your phone, on your laptop, whatever it is. So we're going to give you $50. So if you go into the show notes, click the link, and hit the promo code FAPOD50, you're going to get $50 on your first year of an all-access membership. And I cannot wait for you to join our immense and immersive community at Filmmakers Academy, where we network, we share knowledge, we just bond as this huge filmmaking resource to ignite your creativity and push you beyond your boundaries. I cannot wait to see you in the Academy, and let's get to the podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Inner Circle podcast. If you're here, it's not by accident. You want to level up your filmmaking career. I'm Lydia Hurlbut, holistic coach and Reiki master.
And I'm Shane Hurlbut. I'm an ASC AMPAS cinematographer. And also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram and check out our YouTube channel. You can follow us on Apple and Spotify, these Inner Circle podcasts. All right, let's get to it. So this episode is one of my favorites. It's the interview process. How do you interview? How do you prepare? How do you really get the mindset correct when you walk into that room with a director, with a producer, whoever you're interviewing for that job? We want to shine a light on this process and kind of give you our best laid plans of advice and wisdom moving forward. All right, Lydia, take it away.
I love interviewing. I've done a lot of it in my life. And I think what's exciting, Shane, is that I've had really bad interviews and I've learned so much where I was so nervous, I actually destroyed myself in the interview. So I think we want to today really talk about what is the most important thing that you can do to set yourself up for success. And I would argue your mindset, number one, and your preparation for that interview. And that can be tricky sometimes because they come in at the last minute. All of a sudden, you might have somebody call you up and say, hey, you're interviewing tomorrow. So what can you do even if you don't have that much time to do the research? Things like IMDb is absolutely critical. And I think for filmmakers, the first place to go and really take a deep dive into IMDb.
Yeah, you got to do the work. That's the thing. It's like you can't just show up not knowing what the director or the producer or whoever you're interviewing has done in the past. It's very important for you to do that research and to say, okay, look up Wikipedia, find out their backstory. What else you want to do? You want to find articles that might have been written about them, so you can do that. Look at their past projects, whether it's television series, feature films, commercials, music videos. Do the deep dive so you come in and you can start to relate to them. And one thing that I always try to do is when I'm looking at one of their projects, if there's something that really like shines bright and was like very cool, I will remember that. That's something that I take into that interview with me. And I'm like, you know what, when you on this film, when you did this, or I love the emotion, where you went with the direction on this, all these kind of things kind of add to the icebreaker kind of stuff that really has to start that interview. So you're starting off on a really good foot.
I agree. Specificity is so important. And the other thing that really matters is if it's based on a book, make sure that you're reading the book. And here's the thing, if it's the night before, obviously you don't have time to plow through an entire book. But I think I have skimmed books when I've had to interview people for our podcast or to be on somebody else's podcast. I wanted to make sure that I was so prepared and knowledgeable going in, because you know what? It shows, and it shows to them, the director, whomever it is, that you have taken the time to do the work. And that is also letting them know that you will do the same thing on the project. So it's getting specific, it is doing the deep dive, and it's getting your hands on as much knowledge as you possibly can.
Now, let's really set the stage for if I'm getting a script, right? So you get a script, and there's definitely time for you to read it, right? So they do give you that time. So let's say I have 2 days to read it, and then, my agent says that they're going to start the interview process the next week. So, most of the time you have 4 to 5 days to really prep. So you can do all these things. And if there is a book, you can have time to read it. Like, I had a TV series called The Perfect Couple, and there was a book specifically written on that. I read the script first, so I felt the feeling of what the writer wanted her adaptation of that script, and then I read the book to see the layers and more of the in-depth knowledge of the character development that sometimes you cannot add into a television series, especially a limited series. If it was like 3-4 seasons, you can do that character arc. But even in a limited series, 6 episodes, you have much more of an arc than you would on a 2-hour feature. But it's nice reading the book just to get inside the head of the writer, not necessarily the writer of the adaptation for the screen. So, that process, you got 4 or 5 days. And now what I like to do is also come in with a lookbook. And this was something way back in the day. When I was starting to interview, I would literally, and this was before the internet. Okay, I'm dating myself huge. I would come in with a canvas mag bag filled with all these reference books that you see in the background here. And I'd have sticky notes set to orange was composition, green was color, and like magenta was lighting or the look and the mood, right? So these things were super important. And I would come in and I had it all detailed, and I would say, okay, this is what your movie is going to look like. And we discuss it. So that was the old school way. And that was very unique because when I brought that bag in, no other director of photographies had brought in reference books. Production designers would bring in a pitch deck and everything, but DPs were not doing that back in the early 2000s and stuff. So I knew this was unique. Now I just got a script that was sent to me like last week, and they requested a lookbook specifically. So things are changing as the newer directors and everything's kind of coming up the ladder. They like to see the vision. They like to see what you're going to be bringing to the table. So preparing a lookbook that breaks down composition style, color and mood style, tone and lighting style. And one thing that I add to the lookbook, which I absolutely love, is what I call inspiration. So it's like images that really moved me that we could try to interject into the film. And they're just a series of images that look really unique and kind of out of the box in regards to, like, it might fit, but it not might fit, but it's an inspiration kind of thing. So that's kind of, how I try to prepare that lookbook.
So, and there's so many great tools nowadays, and I want to circle back on how much of a vision you have, right? And where to keep the flexibility. But things like Shot Deck are so great because, and Larry and team have done an amazing job in having all of these references available. But I think it's also, there's a trap as an artist about becoming too attached to something or repeating things, especially in your lookbooks. If you're like, ooh, that worked the last time, I'm going to use that again. And it's also like being attached to certain lenses that you use for a project. You just need to go into the interview being open and having complete flexibility. And I think that this is something that, from a mindset perspective, is very important to really hit the reset button on each project and to notice, okay, this is what I think I would like my point of view to be for this particular project, but not being so rigid in your execution of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that you also want to, like, Shot Deck is awesome because it dials in. You can search everything by mood, by lighting style, by shot description, by medium, wide. I mean, it's incredible, the database that Shot Deck has. The other thing is, and they're now getting more foreign films in there, which really inspires the hell out of me, because with the reference books that you see in the background, they're photographers from all over the world. They're Japanese, they're Chinese, they're European, they're American. So you want to try to pull from all over, because I feel like, being a cinematographer, there's been so many cinematographers that have already kind of set the groundwork and the rules and the style. So, I found myself like a mixtape creator. I grab a little of Deakins, grab a little of Bob Richardson, grab a little Chivo, inspiration for Harris Savides. It's like I'm grabbing these masters and how they light and their styles and everything, and kind of making a mixtape of my own cinematography, and then kind of turning that and shaping it and making it mine, right?
And that's a beautiful way to use all of these incredible sources and make an amalgamation of everything that is true to you. And I think one of the things that I want to really hit home is that you've got to be yourself in an interview. The absolute worst mistake that you could make is to try on being somebody else, a cinematographer that you admire, or thinking that you have to act a certain way for the director or for the person, whoever's interviewing you. I think the greatest interviews that I have had are when I am authentic and vulnerable. I'm sharing from my soul and my heart about what is important to me, so that people are getting a sense of my talent, my skill set, who Lydia is behind the imagery that I'm showing them.
Yeah. And I think one thing that I've always said to a lot of people when they ask me the specific question, how do you interview, is, come in with a point of view, right? You got to read the room, and you got to really figure out, and with your research of researching the director, you're going to kind of find his or her personality and what they like. You can just see it from their work. I always try to look at one of their films and really kind of focus on what their unique style brought to that project, because I want to then interject that into my point of view, right? So you're trying to from that research, you're morphing their point of view that you've taken from their projects, as well as molding and morphing that into your point of view, right? So you get a little of his or her amongst your talent and point of view in the project. And I've never gone into an interview where I'm like, what do you think this should look like? Or what do you think it should be like? Because when it's all said and done, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. So you really got to find out if this is a person that you actually want to hang out with for 6 or 8 months or 4 months and collaborate with. You can immediately, I like to interview and be curious and ask questions based on my research of like how they like to roll out on set. Is it a quiet set? Is it one that's, I have directors that when I walk in the morning, the music is blasting, right? Completely blasting. And everyone is like all,
energetically
bouncing to it, and and all of a sudden the music dims down and goes out, and then boom, we get to shoot. So there's ones that the set is very alive. There's others that are super quiet, and so you want to find that. Because our job as cinematographers is to kind of morph into the cinematographer that they want, right? And what you said was very correct. You do not want to try to alter or change your personality, but you do want to do, like, if it's going to be a quiet set, I'm not going to, hey, come in, you're going to come in like, hey, how are you doing today? Oh, it's like you adjust to that style.
And I think that that's a very important point throughout the interview itself, because I have seen people make mistakes where they have come on too strong in the beginning, delivering their point of view, and actually intimidated the director, and where the director was like, wow, this person is just too much for me. And I've also seen people be too timid in the beginning where there's more of a hemming and hawing, and then the director thought, oh my gosh, or could think, wow, the person would have a really hard time making a decision.
Exactly.
So I think it's being authentic, being yourself, but think of it like a dance and an energetic flow where you're getting to know them and you're listening very deeply. I think another pitfall or mistake to really watch out for in an interview is that you want to listen so deeply to what that person is saying or the question being asked, so that you can then find little moments of magic to deliver ideas, or to, depending on how the process is going, to show them something that they might not have thought of, or to showcase your skill set in a very authentic way that doesn't feel like, look at me from an egoic standpoint,
right?
But at the same time delivers like, wow, this person really knows what they're doing.
Yeah. And I think that point of view and that kind of, being humble the whole time. It's not like, it's like, what we did on this last one was, you kind of leave the ego at the door and be able to, kind of suggest things. And that's something that I kind of want to dive into, because, reading the script is so important, and you want to, I've made some missteps in the beginning of my career, and I kind of want to talk to you all about those. Because one of the things that I thought my job was to read the script and take it apart from a cinematography standpoint. What the lighting emotion was going to be, what the camera emotion was going to be, dive into the script and see what the message is, and maybe, talk about 3 or 4 scenes that are like really specific, and kind of put together a kind of an idea of the shot and pitch that, right? So you're thinking as a cinematographer, and you're taking the message points or maybe a really interesting key frame from a scene that delivers that emotional impact in one shot, or, you have an idea for a oneer for the opening, anything that's going to be like that really shiny thing on top of the hill that really gets the director excited. I thought that was my job as going in on an interview. But I went for a job interview, and I really wanted this movie, and I lost it. And I went to my agent and I said, why did I lose this job? I thought I had a great interview. And they said, well, you did have a really good interview. They loved your energy, loved your point of view and everything. But the client that we also rep went in, and he had suggested script changes and reordering of scenes and a different perspective on it. And I was like, whoa, okay. So she goes, sometimes you just need to read the script like a director and see maybe problems in the script or suggest ideas. And that was a huge aha moment for me. Now, of course, you need to read the room with this because, you can stomp on the director's ego and process of that. But I had a great moment when I was interviewing for a film with a director. And I said, there are so many scenes where we're going into these restaurants. And I go, can we just make one like an outside kind of taco truck kind of scenario where they go in and they get all blitzed on tequila, and we create this round environment where there's a circle of taco trucks, and we do like Astera tubes that create like a carousel effect. And, we're moving, the camera's moving. It has this circle kind of quality that ends up spinning around as they slam tequila and go into this montage. And he's like, I love that idea. Let's change that up. Let's get out of the restaurant. So that got me the job. That specifically, because I remember hearing from the producer, it says when you came in for the interview, he loved your ideas of flipping the script and changing the location and going deeper down that rabbit hole.
And I think it's your job as the interviewee, and nobody really talks about this, but to be the value add. You're the value add. So how can you add value without controlling, without being over the top too much? Because you could pitch too many ideas and actually overwhelm and tick off a director too, right? So it's really listening to your intuition and being very flexible in the moment of the interview. And that's where that deep listening comes in, and reading body language of the person that is interviewing you.
Because, a cinematographer's job is lighting and camera assist.
Yes.
Right? To the story. It's taking what the script delivers, then how the actors, evoke that emotion, then how the director ends up crafting that, and then we take that lighting and camera emotion and hopefully take the whole process higher, right?
Yes.
So that's really our job. So, listening to and coming up with these ideas, you're absolutely right. You got to read the room. If they're like, I love that, and then you're like, okay, that is an opening for other suggestions, right? So if they're really into it, or if you pitch the taco truck idea and they're like, I was really set on this, restaurant thing. We're like, okay, cool, no problem. We'll have it in the restaurant, but you have to sometimes pitch without fear, I feel, because if you don't, you're definitely, you're leaving great ideas on the table, and you need to come in swinging, because there's so much competition out there that I feel if you're just going to come in, listen to, because the worst thing I think you could do is, what is your vision of the movie? That question, if you ask that to the director, I feel that's like the worst thing you can start with.
I agree.
Because they're interviewing you to see what your collaboration is going to be. Just like I said, you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. And most of the time, I find the directors are trying to find who you are as a person, just like you're trying to figure them out as well. So,
right, because it's as much a personality match.
Yes.
Because most likely every person that they have will be at the same level of skill that they're interviewing or close. So it really comes down to personality. And I think it's also just having them get to know you in an authentic way. Maybe, and again, it depends on the interview, right? But I've seen interviews go where they want to know, do you have kids, or what hobbies do you like to do? Like, what do you do outside of filmmaking? And I think it's really sharing authentically, vulnerably, and without fear, as you're saying, but understanding when to dial it up and offer more, or tone it back a little bit depending on how the person's reacting.
Right. So what I also try to do in interviews is, because you usually know where you're going to shoot the movie by the time you're doing the interview. So, is it going to be in Atlanta? Is it going to be in London? Is it going to be in New Orleans or whatever? So I'm a foodie and a wine freak. So when I know, I'll ask that. Those are icebreaker questions as well. So where are you guys thinking about shooting this thing? And it's going to be in New Orleans. I'm like, I love that city. I've shot 4 movies down there. We have an amazing crew to pull from down there, and the food. I mean, do you like food? Do you like wine? So these are great icebreaker things too, to kind of interject. And it also starts to show your personality. Right. It's like, when we land, let's go down. Well, what kind of food do you like? We'll, make a reservation at it's like all these kind of things. You open up and you kind of, when you see those openings, you kind of try to inject your personality as much as possible.
I love that. You want to capitalize on that. Or are they into health and wellness? Or what is their passion that you have a similar alignment with? Because the minute that you feel aligned, they're more likely to pick you.
Yes.
Because they think, oh my gosh, that's Shane, we're going to have a million great dinners together.
Well, it's just like a good CV or resume doesn't just put everything that you do as a filmmaker. I love food. I love wine. I've traveled the world searching great wine and food. These are kind of things you always sprinkle in so they can kind of get to know you as a person. So that's always good to put in your CV and resume. And also you want to try to sprinkle it in the interview as well.
Yes.
I mean, there's people that are like sports fanatics, and I've had directors that are so into football. So, that's something that can come up in a meeting too. So you can bond over sports, you can bond over food, whatever it is. Try to dig out that personality traits from the director, not forcefully, but, have it, kind of try to come up and find those openings to try to understand the person.
Yes, totally agree. Okay, so now let's dive into what happens when an interview fails miserably. Or let's say that you're pitching and the director is constantly responding of, yeah, that doesn't feel right to me. Or no. Have you had those interviews? And I think the biggest thing is, or what if you thought an interview went really, really well and you were so confident, you were like, wow, I knocked it out. And then you got turned down for a project. And one thing that I would love to start out with is I think our ability to gauge how we did in an interview is very poor. And what I mean by that is you go in, you give it your absolute all. You pitch without fear. You do your best, but your ability to read it because you're so in the process, I don't think is as great as we might think it is. So that's the first thing I want to say. And then the second thing I want to say is if it goes badly, if you get rejected, you have to let it go. You cannot go down that obsessive rabbit hole of should have, could have, would have. Oh my gosh, my career's over. I'm never going to work again. I'm never going to get another job. What am I going to do? You've got to maintain the perspective on it was one interview and the job just was not meant for me.
Yeah, I mean, I've had interviews that my agent didn't tell me it was going to be like this, but immediately when I got into the, let's say we go to a restaurant and the interview is at a restaurant, I've gone in there and I know I'm not getting the job immediately because this has been a call that the agent made to say, hey, I know you've already decided on a DP or whatever. Can you just interview, Shane to help me out here because he hadn't been going out for a while or whatever, and I'm like, I just know walking into that interview.
But how do you know? Your intuition?
Yeah. Just body language, just how he or she is not responding, just like you said, or you can feel like they're just going through the motions. Mm-hmm. There's those. Has an interview gone where they go, no, I don't see that. No, I don't see it. No, I haven't really had those because realistically, the script, if you stick to that script mm-hmm. and you have any talent, you are going to get it 70% close. So I think that the 30% is the decision making of who becomes the director of photography for the project.
Yes.
Because 70%, we're going to go in there. We're going to get it very close to what he or she was hopefully thinking. And it's that 30% of interesting ideas, your personality. Did you immediately connect? These mm-hmm. are things that is the 30% that gets you the gig, not the 70% of all the research, all the development, all the lookbooks, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. That's the 70% that pretty much everyone does. It's the 30% of your personality, your cool ideas, and what you've done in the past that you're able to bring out, not ego-driven, but how, the speed that you work at, the ability of one of the things that I always say is I light an area, not a mark, because I want the actors mm-hmm. to feel like they can move within the environment. And the blocking that is very essential can be something that, is more free flowing. So the lighting is lighting a space, not a mark that they hit. And a lot of directors love to hear that because it's immediately saying flexibility, right?
Yes.
And you want to be as flexible as possible because when you get on set and you see what's scripted, and then you see the direction of the director that changes what was scripted. And then you see the actor take those notes and bend it in a way that's not scripted either. So now you're starting to morph that. So the flexibility of having a lighting environment and I'm not talking about just put top light that seems to be the industry standard now, and people I call it the Netherland light. Where does that light exist? It just happens to exist everywhere. So there's not that, right? I don't like that light. That's not the flexibility that I'm talking about. I'm talking about lighting an area that has contrast, that has mood, that has style, that is based on the emotion. Everything is driven from that. And if there's anything that I can also lay pearls of wisdom on is when you're reading that script, it is all based on emotion. Everything comes from that. And you got to mine that emotion and mm-hmm. start to develop that and pitch those ideas in the interview. Because if you come in with a style and a format that's going to be look at me, well, that is not lighting and camera assist. That is getting your ego in front of the project and showing all these bells and whistles and kind of gaggy kind of stuff that's not necessarily going to fulfill the story.
I love that, Shane, because you brought up so many amazing points in your passion for filmmaking. And one of the things that I would love to talk about is resonating with the script, because you can read a script and it might not be the project for you.
Exactly. And you got to know when to say no. Like I had a project, the script was really good, but it was like, okay, do I want to go to this place in the middle of nowhere? Do I want to, I just got off a project. You gotta understand that, I call, these feature films or like this limited series, it was 11 and a half months of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to recharge. And this film was starting up February 1st. And I just got done with my last project January 8th. So that's not even a month off. And I need that creative time to fill myself back up and to bond with my beautiful wife and reconnect with my family.
Yes.
and do these things that fill me back up with energy and love and gratitude so I can then be my very best as an artist for the next project. So knowing when to, well, this script is good, but am I in the right mindset right now?
Or is it right? There's so many decisions. Is it right for my career? Is it the right project to take to keep the momentum going? Is it right for my family right now? Even if they're coming with me, maybe we need to stay home because of a sick parent or be around. I think there's so much that goes into it aside from the interview in terms of the overall decision making. So let's go into one of the reasons that you might have lost a job and what to do when that happens. And that is, if you have an agenda for the interview, I think another pitfall or mistake is, this is what I want to drive home in this interview. I'm going to prove myself to this director. You can hear in my languaging right there that I have a major agenda, right? I have an agenda. I'm an up and comer. I'm getting this job no matter what. Do you feel that energy of like tightness, attachment? This is going to be my project, mine.
Right. You have to show passion without it seem controlling or having an agenda. And I want to talk about a great interview I had with the late Bill Paxton. And this was this was reading the room, because he is a gentleman's gentleman. I mean, he was such a wonderful man. The way he spoke, the way he listened, he was a great director and a great collaborator. And I went in for an interview for the greatest game ever played. And I remember walking into the Disney offices, and I had my canvas bag with all my reference books, right? And the first thing we talked about was Ojai, right? And I said, oh my God, Lydia and I have been going up to the Ojai Valley Inn and Spa for, romantic getaways forever. And he goes, my God, I live right down the street and all this kind of stuff. So that was like our icebreaker and I could immediately see that I was in the zone, right? In regards to how we were talking and relating and everything. And I just went for it. And I said, you know what? This is what this movie should look like. And I put down this book, and it was Bound for Glory. And he goes, oh, really? And I was like,
uh-oh.
I was shrinking in my chair. And he goes, no. And I go, oh my God. I was like, I came in and I knew this was the look for this movie. And I had that agenda like you're talking about. And is it going to backfire, right? And he goes, he stands up, and he's a tall guy. And I'm sitting there like, whoa, whoa. And then he walks over and he pulls out this book that's on his bookshelf, and he puts it down, and it's Bound for Glory. And he goes, this is what this movie should look like. And it was the exact same book. And I looked at him and I go, now we're talking. And I'll never forget, I'm driving home, and this is something that I want to throw out to directors personally. That man, while I was in my car driving back to our home in Pasadena, called me. And I saw the 805 area code, so I knew that was Ojai. And I said, hello, this is Shane. And he goes, hey, Shane, this is Bill Paxton. And I'm like, hey, Bill, how you doing? I just wanted to know, I want you to shoot my movie.
Oh.
And it was the kindest and the best way to really do that.
Yes.
And I find that now everything is done through handlers. It's not the director that ever calls you. The director is the producer calls you, or their assistant calls you,
it's so corporate.
It's so corporate. And,
corporate.
you know, this is my advice to directors out there. When you're interviewing somebody and you want to tell them that they got the job, personally call them up, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a collaboration. We're going to be working 6, 8, 4, 12 months together. You know, give us the courtesy of giving us that call.
And I think it's the person is, when you've left that interview, you're wondering, okay, I think it went really well, but I'm not 100% positive. And this is where I'm saying our ability to judge it, even if he had the same book, until you get that call, until you get the call from your agent or from the director themselves, you have no idea. And you're sitting on pins and needles as the artist.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's the longest wait. It is the absolute longest wait. And it's not only the longest wait from the emotional standpoint, from the career standpoint, but also the financial standpoint, because you're like, okay, am I earning money for the next 6 months or 8 months? Am I supporting myself and my family? Like, there's so much for the cinematographer that goes into it.
And the competition has exploded.
Yes.
Right. You know, I'm seeing an A list of young DPs coming up that is tenfold what was coming up when I was starting out.
Yes.
So you have that hour and that hour and a half, whatever that interview is, to really shine a spotlight on the script, shine a spotlight on the ideas that you might have come up with, shine a spotlight on the love of filmmaking. I mean, that's one thing that everyone always has told me, that I have passion that is, you cannot extinguish it.
Yes.
Every day I love what I do. Every day I can't believe that I get paid to do what I do. It's just that kind of energy of coming in and just loving what you do. So that's something that you also want to craft into your interview. People want to feel that. People want to own that passion, right? Because that's what fuels you to go the distance. I mean, I'll never forget on Act of Valor. I was literally, we were driving, we landed in Miami, and we're driving down to Key West, and I am shot listing on my computer the whole time while Scotty is driving, and I'm putting it into our shot list, and I'm coming up with schematics and everything, all in the car. This is that devotion, that passion that you are, and when I was selecting Scotty Has a New Movie, I wasn't available for it. So I suggested some director of photographies to go in an interview. And I said the one thing to this guy I thought was going to be the best pick. I said, Tito, when you go into that interview, you talk about how you are willing to shot list on the weekends for free, how you dive in and you want to prepare a lookbook, you want to do the research. I prepped him perfectly to understand Scotty's mindset.
Yes.
Because Scotty is somebody that's all in. He's passionate as hell too. And he wants that same kind of passion. And I'll never forget how many weekends on Need for Speed that we went to the same Mexican restaurant. We had the same salsa, the same chips, and we just sat there and worked with the storyboards and the shot list for 8 to 10 hours on Saturday and Sunday. And then we turn right around and Monday morning hit it again, right? So there's this devotion that you need to show and come off in that interview of how much you're going to be invested in their project. That's another thing that, again, reading the room and know when those times to bring that up are going to be very important. It's just like doing the work, because I have heard from many producers and production managers and everything where I go into the office every day. I get in there at 8 or 9 and I'm going at 6 or 7 at night. And I'm there for the AD, for the producer for a question, for the production manager, for the production coordinator if they're ordering or renting gear. I'm there for that process to help be efficient. I am not the person that does not come into the office, that is just off doing whatever they say they're doing. So it's like, these are the kind of things that you want to kind of lay into that interview process as well.
Yes. And then we've touched on it, but I'd love to go into kind of how you end is everything.
Yes.
Because whether or not you've gotten the job, it is your chance to make an impression. It is your chance to. So I think how you end anything is literally everything. And I don't think people have thought about this nuance as much.
Well, it's just like when you're doing a job, you're only remembered on the last day, right?
Yes. On your attitude, on thanking the crew, on all of those little details that make people say, wow, what a great human
experience.
And what a great experience.
Yeah.
So for an interview, whether or not you get the job, you thank the director for their time, try to get their email and say, here's what I loved about it. And proactively put in there, I'm so excited to work on this project with you. So it's almost acting as if, because you don't know the answer yet. It could be you. It could be somebody else.
And the follow-up is huge. You know, I always reach out in the interview. I don't necessarily like try to grab their email address and everything, because that could be a little forward.
After.
So I'll go to my agent and I'll say, hey, can you get the director's, email address? Because I want to send a thank you note.
Yes.
And the other thing is, if they were really jonesing with your lookbook, I also send the lookbook to them. And this is something where I remember like 4 or 5 years ago, somebody said, Shane, I see how you prepare and I see your lookbooks. Aren't you scared that they're just going to rip that off? I'm like, please, guys, creativity is endless.
And I think staying out of this fear mentality of, I'm a creator. I have the ability to continue to create. and if I'm choosing to give you this gift comes without strings attached.
Exactly. It doesn't mean I want that gig. It means that you really responded to a lot of the images.
Yeah.
So, even if I don't get the job, here is the lookbook, and you can dial that in with whoever the cinematographer is that you are hiring. But that's where we want to go.
Yes.
Right? That's the whole mentality of, sharing your knowledge, sharing your ideas. This is not something that is going to stop,
dry up,
and if they take your ideas, look at it as a compliment.
Exactly. So I think I just want to end on residue.
Okay. Let's talk about that.
As our very last point. It is very important to keep every project, every interview clean. So whether or not you get the job, if you get the job, celebrate. Yes, I'm working, I have money, yay. If you don't get the job, wish whomever did get it well, wish the production well, wish everybody on that project well, and tell yourself this wasn't the job for me for whatever reason. And you don't need to understand why it wasn't for you.
Yeah, you cannot internalize that because that will eat you up inside.
Yes.
And I have actually called up the director of photography that did get the job and say, hey, we were interviewing together and I just want to say, go for it and have a great time. I really enjoyed the director, loved his or her, I just loved the script and kudos to you, break a leg.
And that should happen every time, because what all of that does is it prevents sticky residue. And whenever there's sticky residue, that follows future work, future interviews, and you've opened yourself up by being energetically clean to all of these amazing projects coming your way.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that concludes this episode of the Inner Circle Podcast. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify and Apple and our YouTube channel at filmmakersacademy.com.